welcome to yet another Star Trek podcast. My name is Drew. I'll be your host today. I'm joined by Brad. Hi, Brad.
Did I just walk into some sort of like Star Trek / WrestleMania crossover?
Did it work?
Yeah, man. Like it was like I felt like right there. We have The Rock coming out soon, and he's going to be playing the SmackDown, and you have, Riker going there to do the leg over stomp right there,
The Riker leg over stomp. Oh, man.
I'm glad you got that.
So I don't know what happened. I just kind of came up with that on the fly, as most of the things that come out of my mouth tend to be. There's very little planning on this side of the podcast, but I'm so tired, Brad. I am so tired, and as I was doing this guttural announcement, I was hoping that maybe it would give me some energy, kind of like how the Klingons warn the dead. And I think it may have worked.
Oh, that's good, man. Just see what it is. You just got to scream at the top of your lungs. It just, hopefully that doesn't bother your cats or wife.
I mean, they're kind of used to it at this point. How you doing, man?
You know what? It's funny. I'm the one with the newborn baby, or at least I say close to newborn baby, and I probably got more sleep than you did last night than I've had probably in like so long.
You know what, man? I'm not going to compare sleep. I'm not going to sleep shame you. I'm happy for you. I am. I'm really glad because you deserve it, man. You've had a rough go in the sleep department in these past few months, and I'm really happy to hear that you got a good night's rest.
I appreciate that. It's been so long since you and I have chatted, a whole 24 hours apparently.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I like it. We should do this more often.
I know. It's so much fun.
To just give the dear listeners an inside scoop. Majid has rejoined us from Starfleet Academy. He was temporarily held in the brig for leaving an upper decker in the Admiral's office.
We'll talk more about that in our other show with him.
Yeah, you'll hear about that a few weeks from now, because Brad and I have decided to veto all other episodes until season 3 of Picard comes to an end, and we will be bringing you these short synopses in the meantime.
That's not that too much longer, though. I mean, if you think about it, it's 2 episodes per episode for us, and
it's only 5 episodes for our show.
Yeah. So the loyal listeners, don't worry. You'll get your beloved sexy brown sugar back any day now.
Oh my God. So Brad, we got 2 episodes of Picard that we're going to talk about. 17 Seconds and No Win Scenario. No Win Scenario just came out yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one that's hot off the presses. But before we talk about No Win Scenario, what do you say we rewind the clock a little bit? Talk about 17 Seconds.
17 seconds ago was the WrestleMania thing, right?
If you smell.
Yeah. So I actually didn't watch 17 Seconds last week. I watched it, on Wednesday in anticipation of watching the 4th one on Thursday, just so I can have back-to-back coverage. And you know what? I'm quite frankly glad I did that. I was not as disheartened as I was, I think, after watching 17 Seconds that I could have been, knowing that I would only have to wait a few hours before I can watch the next one.
Were you did you walk away from this episode feeling disappointed in any way?
I'm not gonna lie to you, and there's a lot of points that really let me down in this episode, and I'll be honest, I was kind of surprised. Like we were at a steady pace where things were going, and just 17 seconds and things kind of dropped the ball.
It only takes 17 seconds to screw up an entire series, apparently.
Clearly.
Yeah, man. Like I walked away. I watched this episode last week when it aired, and I walked away feeling almost defeated because I had given so much hope to this show, and it just let me down in ways that I think most people would not anticipate. And then I started to think about some of the storyline possibilities. And I tried to put some pieces together, and I was able to salvage, in my mind, the possibility that maybe I just wasn't seeing the bigger picture. And then I was wrong. Everything was exactly as I thought it was. But then the next episode essentially just wiped the slate clean, and just it didn't like erase my fears. It just ignored them.
Yeah, I can say that. Like it changed the direction. There were, I do have to say, there were some points in 17 seconds that I actually enjoyed.
Well, let's dive into it. Let's hash this episode out.
So we start with in the past, actually, with this episode. We start, I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was the bar 10 forward, Gaiden's bar on Earth, I believe. And it's Picard and Riker kind of toasting each other, congratulating on everything that's going on. And it's I guess if I'm understanding correctly, it's the birth of Riker's son.
Yes, and it's also the birth of a horrible de-aging CG. My God.
You know, see honestly, like I it's not the, you know what, it's not the de-aging that really shows for me, honestly. It's the sound of Picard's voice. Now, I know you mentioned that you recently did a rewatch from TNG, and like I think about how Patrick Stewart has aged over the years, and even from like the last movie we saw him in for Star Trek, he definitely has a much more tired old man type of vibe for his voice in the Picard series. And honestly, in that going back in time sequence, it just basically didn't change anything with his voice. They just tried to mask it with the makeup.
The thing that I think frustrates me is that like Patrick Stewart is clearly playing an old man. Now, Patrick Stewart's not a spring chicken, right? He's older than or as old as William Shatner, I believe, right? He's up there. But I feel like if you listen to Patrick Stewart in an interview, I don't feel like he speaks like an old man. He talks normal. And I feel like Picard is being played like an old man. Like this is an acting choice that Patrick Stewart has made. I'm not a fan of it.
You know, I agree, because I think I texted you today and I was like, this is like another episode of grumpy old men, the next generation.
Grumpy old men, the next generation. Yeah, that's accurate. That's accurate.
Because it's just the old boys kind of going around, and it's like, oh, my back, I hurt my back kind of attitude, or oh man, my knee is giving out.
Yeah.
But thankfully we don't last too long on that background scene of yesteryears, and we go back to present day Titan, where the ship is getting the, lack of the better word, ship beat out of it.
The ship is getting the ship beat out of it. Ugh.
Yo, Franks would love that crap, man.
Well, Franks is not here, and he's probably not listening to this because he doesn't watch the show. So,
yeah, that's true. That's fair. But the whole tit for tat type of attitude, they're getting their crap beat out of them. You have the Titan kind of going downhill, and then you have Jack Crusher being like the noble, hey, just give me up type of attitude the entire episode. Man,
which I appreciate.
I'll be fully honest. I watched this episode like less than probably 2 days ago, and it's a blur. I don't remember much of it, honestly. That's how much it resonated. There's only like a few points in this episode that really kind of stuck with me.
Yeah. Well, there were a couple of scenes that I think were really prominent, and while the action scenes were cool, they all basically led to, they were all means to an end.
This is where things kind of go worse. I don't remember the enemy ship's name at the moment. But the enemy ship is just
the Shrike.
The Shrike just is destroying them. They have the portal gun technology, we find out in this episode, and they're playing a good game of Portal. They're playing like, hey, you know what? Let's suck this ship back into the nebula. Let's not let them leave. To be fully honest, it was a whole lot of nothing actually gets accomplished in this episode.
Right.
And what in truly ends this part is that it's just the ship gets damaged, the actual ship's captain gets incapacitated, and he kind of gets gives the command to Riker.
Yeah, so the Titan gets the crap kicked out of it. Captain Shaw smacks his head on a bulkhead or on the deck or something. Ending up going to sick bay with, he's got like a bone protruding from his leg as well too. Let's not forget, and gives command of the ship to Riker, like out of spite, right?
Like get me out of this mess.
Yeah. He's like, you got me into this, get us out of it. Right. Now, meanwhile, Picard does approach Beverly, and they finally have a conversation. And boy, was this an uncomfortable one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it did not. I had mixed feelings about it. I'm not sure about you. Like, I was torn between, like, I liked it and hated it at the exact same time. I felt like the conversation was a legitimate conversation between Picard and Beverly, where Picard's like, why didn't you tell me? And Beverly was like, I made attempts, but realized that the life that you live is no life that I want to raise my son in.
I appreciated her attempts, right? She gave a whole laundry list of attempts that she had made to talk to Jean-Luc about this child. And it wasn't like, oh, I tried to call you or I tried to speak to you once or twice. It was like 7, 8, 9 times. It was exhausting how many times she listed.
And each time she listed it, she listed a reason why she didn't tell him. And it was like he got captured or he got called away for some sort of thing.
Right.
And it,
they were all like valid reasons. Like, I cannot fault her one bit for just being like,
and
I quit.
And it's funny, like when Picard has this point of, hey, if you told me, I would have changed my life. I would have pushed my life to be different. That was his argument. Like he claims, Beverly made the choice for him. He didn't actually have that opportunity. And from her defense is that he always gets sucked in. It's not necessarily if it was one thing, it's going to be something else that will suck him in, and he would not be able to say no.
Yeah, she was arguing that whether or not he made the choice to have Jack in his life, somebody else would make the choice for him. Which is a valid concern, I was not expecting her reasoning to add up, and I think it really did.
That's kind of why I actually liked it. I think because the logic behind it actually made sense the way she described it. I was like, okay, that's an acceptable answer. The reason why I didn't really like it is because it was just such painful to watch for me.
Yeah.
That just it felt it did feel a little bit the chemistry wasn't there as what I once thought there would be between Beverly and Picard. It just didn't feel like the same chemistry from what I remember. And that's kind of why it felt a little awkward for me.
Do you think that the chemistry was awkward because the characters themselves were in an awkward situation? Like, do you think that the actors were coming through, or do you think that they just lost the chemistry that they had when they were filming TNG?
I think they lost the chemistry from TNG. Like I mean, of
Because
course,
I kind of felt like the chemistry was there a little bit more prominently in the following episode.
yes.
So I'm kind of inclined to believe that it was just an acting choice, and one that I think they succeeded at. Like, I know, you and I have talked about like film studies and some of our shows that we like in the past. And like, think back to that scene in the sickbay when the two of them are starting their conversation. They are so far apart from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's representing the distance that they've put between them. There's all these sick beds in between them, and eventually they start to move closer and closer as they talk and start to bond over the situation.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. I didn't think about it that way, where it's more of a choice, but it just, I guess, yeah. Thinking about the following episode, there was a lot. The chemistry was there compared to that one. Yeah, I guess you're right. Maybe it was just the difficult conversation they have, and they purposely made it a very awkward, because it made me feel uncomfortable. And I guess that was the point, is to make the audience feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I think it worked.
Yeah.
Definitely. So not all the fun is happening on the Titan, though. I mean, we are having some fun on the La Serena, right?
Yep.
Raffi is in the cabin, and she hears music playing from down the hallway. And it's Worf practicing sword drills. He's using his Kurleth, and he's listening to some opera.
I felt like they could have handled that introduction for Worf a little better. And that's another area that I was just kind of very meh about. So you're saying he was doing sword drills, right?
Yeah.
What is one of the things that he first says to Raffi is like, I've changed my ways as to how I handle myself. And to me, I think it would have been more appropriate if it went to him doing meditation.
I could agree with that, because this is the same Worf that we know doing those drills, right? This is very familiar Worf in the holosuite of DS9, doing his katas. But his introduction of "I am Worf, son of Moog, son of
that gave me
Rozhenko,
goosebumps, man.
Yeah.
That was just
House
like
of Martok. He was just like listing the credentials, and it's all families that he is a part of, and I loved it.
Oh, that part was great. It was just the one thing I was like, I felt like it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, I was just like, oh man, because I think it was more of like those hindsight 2020, where it's like, oh, you tell me afterwards. I think that would have been a better approach to it.
Did you have you seen the memes where they take the Worf, son of Moog, House of Rozhenko stuff and put it on a Starbucks cup?
No, I haven't.
As if that's his order. Like, you know how when you order from Starbucks, you give him your name, and that's the name he gives them, and somebody scribbles all of that.
I have not seen that. That's hilarious.
Oh
I'll have to check that out.
It is delightful. I will send it to you. Oh man, but carry on.
But I think I'm a little bit disappointed overall with the story arc for Raffi and Worf.
Okay.
And I'm not disappointed with like their acting. I'm not disappointed with like how thing like what their path is. But to me, like it felt like the writers were taking a very simplistic approach towards getting to the point where they wanted to get, because they know that they need to find some guy and they need to grab him for like more information. And you know what, like as soon as like they cut to them like trying to go get this guy, I was like, man, this is the exact same scenes they were just were using. They just went down the street and changed the camera angle, and I was disappointed that they didn't try to take more effort to build up the environment, maybe make it in like a bar or something,
Yeah.
or some location that they had to go to. It just felt like they didn't really care too much as far as the budgetary stuff, and so they're like, oh, we're gonna use that somewhere else, so this part doesn't really matter, so we're just not going to put too much effort in that.
Yeah, the whole scene where they're hunting down the what we later find out is a changeling. When they're hunting him down, it just felt very rushed and very quick. And they keep going back to the same planet, Metalis Prime. And yeah, it felt like the whole thing with them was just on fast forward so that they can introduce the plot point of the changeling over on the Titan.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about the changeling part. But to me, it was a bit of a disappointment that they didn't go, I don't know, a little more detailed, a little bit more driving, to drag me into that environment. It was just more of like a, hey, I got to get the story along. Let's just do this type of approach.
Yeah.
I mean, for all I know, it's like the exact same location where Worf chopped the Ferengi's head off. Like
it was pretty close.
Yeah. So to me, like, then what's the driving motivation as to why we're not going to a different place where probably people know that you chopped somebody's head off?
Well, I think on Metalis Prime, nobody cares. That's the vibe that I'm getting.
That's fair.
But
so Drew, you mentioned the elephant in the room for me. Changelings.
Yeah.
What'd you think, man?
I'm on board for it. I'm not sure if the execution was quite where I wanted it to be. It does feel a little pigeonholed, but I'm not opposed to it because the Dominion War was, I would say, my favorite thing of Star Trek, maybe ever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's a high bar. Like we've got Khan, we've got Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Best of Both Worlds and the Dominion War. Those are like my four of my 5 top favorite things in Star Trek ever. And granted, like you can't really compare them all because the Dominion War spanned like 4 seasons, but whatever. Go ahead.
Did you know immediately as soon as you saw that first like ripple of the character? I called it. I totally called that one.
I don't know if I wasn't paying attention fully or if I just wasn't thinking in those terms. I'm trying to remember the circumstances and when I watched the episode. But no, I was not thinking along those lines. So once they started like really drilling into him and then obviously he turned into goo, like I was kind of caught off guard by that, but I didn't see it coming.
I called it because I saw the ripple when they were on the Titan and we see like the guy, Jack is fighting the guy and like something happened. I was like, was that a changeling? And then I was like, no, that can't be a changeling. Like, that doesn't make much sense. And then the end scene when the guy turns to goo. Now I kind of want to talk a little bit like the next episode. We see more of the changeling in the episode that just was released on Thursday.
Right.
So thinking about DS9, the wonderful, wonderful special effects and how we see it today. What are your thoughts on how they differ?
I mean, I'm kind of over it. like here's the thing, man. They got so much more money now and they've gotten so good with the CG. The CG in DS9 was the same CG that they used in Terminator, but with a fraction of the budget. Like we're talking Terminator 2, the T-1000, the morphing technology. So I think we knew deep down inside, like it wasn't the greatest, but we accepted it. And as being lifelong Star Trek fans, when we accept something, we accept it for life.
So if you think about Deep Space Nine, the morph I don't really know how to describe it. The way they morph was more of like a metallic type of
Yes.
approach, more fluid, liquid, like that. This one is, how can I properly describe it? It's more of like fleshy.
It's very organic looking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever played the game Carrion?
Yes. It
It
kind
kind
of
of it
looked like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the main blob that you play as in Carrion. Just very fleshy with like tendrils and stuff, and it was gross.
It was a different approach that I did not expect them to take for it.
Do you
but
like it?
I liked it better in the second episode,
Okay.
and it made more sense to me.
Okay.
But before we get into the second episode, let's go back to how the first one ends.
Yeah.
With them trying to escape. The Shrike, is it Shrike you said?
Yep.
Shrike not destroys them, but like basically beats the living heck out of them. And it gets to a point where Picard goes to Riker's like, we need to attack. We can't just run away. And Riker listens to him.
Yeah.
And
so they don't, like, we talked briefly about the portal gun, but they didn't bust that out until almost the end of the episode, if I recall, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a big deal. They are just literally opening up a wormhole in space with 2 points, and just the ship goes into one, comes out the other. And if the listeners have played the game Portal, they'll know exactly what we're talking about. It's exactly like that. But if you're not, like, just imagine like looking across the room and there's a hole in the wall, and you could see in the hole in the wall another wall from within the room. And there's another portal like that's connecting it. If you walk through point A, you come out of point B, no matter where they place it. And they started using this to their advantage. Like, they were essentially ensnaring the Titan. You know, they're dropping a portal right in front of the thing, so it has no way of stopping. It goes through the portal and it comes back out again right in front of their own weapons.
And then
eventually the Titan shoots itself.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like they just basically shoot off like I don't remember how many missiles out. It was like 5 or something like that, and they open the portal and it automatically hits the Titan in the back.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
It was a much better attack than throwing a ship at them.
Yeah, I would agree.
But at that point, that's after Picard convinces Riker to attack, and they end the episode with them sinking further and further into the nebula, and Riker's just like, Picard, get off the bridge! Like, you just killed us. This
is where I lost my shit. This is the part that pissed me off.
Really?
That was so uncharacteristic of Riker. And the way he behaved was just absolutely childish. Like, he is a professional officer, and he's never said anything like that I recall to somebody, especially somebody of a higher rank.
I think I disagree with you only because what Picard said before they attacked, which was like, it's time, like, no time to be afraid. And it was like a blatant reference to Riker losing his son, kind of.
So you're saying that Picard hit a low blow?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why he kicked him off, is because it's based upon that. I mean, obviously,
I would need to like rewatch it to kind of keep that in the back of my mind. If that's the case, then sure, I would agree with you. But the thing that bothered me the most is just, I don't know, these two they've spent so much time on this show establishing how close of a relationship that they have, which I can buy into, because although the Bridge of the Enterprise was very professional, those two served together so long and saved each other's lives for so many times that like it's plausible that they would have a very warm and friendly outside of work relationship, right?
Yeah.
So for Riker to behave in that context, let's just assume that like, you know, you and I haven't just discussed it. To me, like that was just infuriating. And it took me like 24 to 48 hours to kind of sit on it. And then I started wondering, well, maybe one of them's a changeling. And that would explain the behavior.
Okay. I don't.
So you can imagine my disappointment when that was not addressed.
I get it. I see what you're saying. Yeah, and then see episode 4, they don't really bring that up. I really think though it was related towards Picard's comments about the 17 seconds, and that's a reference to like the son that he lost. And I think that was the low blow that hurt Riker.
I could get behind that. Because I mean, after episode 4, the characters that we're following are exactly what they seem, right? I don't think with any credible speculation that anybody from Picard to Riker to Shaw, I don't think any of them are changelings at this point. But leaving episode 3, that was something that I was concerned about. And it could have been either one of them based on that behavior. It really could have been. It could have been Picard insisting that he attacked the Shrike, knowing it was going to get them killed. It could have been Riker trying to run. Or it could have been both of them knowing that there's a saboteur on the ship and trying to oust the saboteur by behaving in that manner, leaving an opening for somebody to quote unquote gain the trust of the captain. You know, meanwhile, like, oh, it's all ruse, like the two of them fighting like they were in on it, right? And none of those things came.
None of those came to fruition.
None of those were true.
So episode 4, no-win scenario. We again start in the past.
They love these flashbacks, don't they?
So what, 5 years before? Yeah, it was like 5 years prior.
Yep.
Picard is sitting down for his, I don't know, lunch, dinner or something.
I assume he's eating like a Ron Swanson steak.
Yeah, that's appropriate. But
the only thing he was missing was a Lagavulin.
Yeah, I know. But this was also, I think, in 10 Forward again, because that's their favorite go-to pre-built set. And Starfleet cadets approach Picard and being like, "Oh my God, Picard, tell us about the stories. Tell us about all these things." And they kind of go through this whole thing, and they revisit once or twice again in the episode. But at least at the moment, it's not really too important.
Right.
Then we cut back to the future, or sorry, the present day, and the Titans continually getting sucked into the actual gravity well. It's just getting deeper and deeper and deeper. All their systems are losing power. At this point, it seems like Riker is just saying, "We're done. We need to make our preparations for our last will and testament type of attitude." And that's kind of where the tone is for everybody, is that they're going to die.
Right.
Now, 7 of 9 tells Riker that there's a changeling on the changeling that attacked Jack, and then there's the one that's on the Titan. Riker doesn't want her to make any announcements or tell anybody, and the whole reasoning is that he wants her to try and identify and find who the changeling is. They do quickly show that the person the changeling was impersonating was found dead. And so that's, obviously something that they don't need to necessarily look, but they do need to find where that changeling is, though.
Right.
Then Jack is in sickbay with his mother because he was exposed to some sort of gas, and we can see Beverly counting down before the waves of some sort of resonant hit the ship from the gravity well. And she's trying to do her best. And I have to admit, I don't think we touched on the episode 3, but she really still knows her shit in this show.
Yeah, I feel like out of all the characters, Beverly is the only one so far that hasn't lost a step. Like, that feels like Beverly Crusher from season 7 of TNG.
I feel, well, I don't think so. I think it's the evolution that we saw in the movies even.
Yes, yeah, you're correct, right? Like clearly, like, she's had some stuff go down, right? Obviously, she has a son now that is with her estranged former lover, Jean-Luc. But so like, her character has changed, but not fundamentally. And that's a problem that I've had with a lot of Picard so far, is I feel like they've lost who these characters are fundamentally. I don't think, like people change. Yes, I agree. I acknowledge that. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But I'm still Drew. Like, I mean, I haven't like become this radically different version of myself.
I think to me, Picard has even changed.
Yeah, I think he's the one that's changed the most. And I don't think that it's been a logical progression.
Because it felt, if you think about before, during the movies and TNG, he was so decisive. This is how things are. And when you see where he's at, it's just an old man who's just kind of unsure of certain things, and I don't feel the same direction from where they used to have him.
Yeah, I agree.
But going back to the episode, Riker talks to Picard and kind of gives him an encouragement of to talk to Jack, take the time and actually have a conversation with him. And so they go, what anybody would do, and go to the holodeck and run a holodeck program of.
I was so pissed about this, and then they dropped one line to like haphazardly explain how they're running a holodeck program while there's no power on the ship.
So yeah, Jack actually comments is like, why do we have a working holodeck? And Picard's like, oh, holodecks are important for exactly times like these because they have their own dedicated power source and yada, yada, yada. And you know what? Honestly, man, like, to me, that answer is kind of BS. And I could think of a better reason why. Thinking about like all those holodeck issue episodes from all the TNG, they could have been like, oh, there's an emergency battery backup for this place just in case like the ship loses power and there's some sort of catastrophe in the holodeck, so people don't die.
That's a perfect explanation, Brad.
Like
that's
to me,
perfect,
because I think that would be great. Because like you could think about like some of those other things, like they're like, oh, we're doing was it photonic light and these other things that if a person like if it just just shuts off, the person could fall and they could injure themselves and they could be falling 10, 20 feet. That would have been an acceptable answer, more so than we need to make sure people de-stress themselves.
Well, I think what he was trying to say without using the words is that this crew is under the belief that they're going to die, and some of them may choose to die in a fantasy.
Fair. That's fair.
And like, if I'm reading between the lines correctly, which I believe I am, it sounds like it's Starfleet trying to be humane about, imminent death, certain death. It's akin to giving these folks like a pill that they could take so they have control over how and when they go,
Yeah.
And that's the vibe that I got. But I agree that your explanation makes infinitely more sense.
Yeah.
Because you would think that, like, even in a life or death situation, the crew should probably be at their stations.
Yeah, pretty much trying to do repairs, trying to figure something out.
Right.
Being
And
case like, what if
that's something else that, like, I kind of like got a little frustrated with about this episode, because um this crew, like, basically just gave up.
Yep.
They didn't really try to get out. They're just like, oh well, everything is draining power. I guess we're just gonna die now.
And it, yeah, I think that was one of the, if you think about other episodes of all the Star Trek series, it's never the, oh, let's just give up, let's work down to the wire till like the very end type of attitude.
Right.
So that was it was a frustration point, but I didn't let it bother me too much.
Yeah, I mean, it was just there. It was a thing that happened.
So we cut to 7 to 9. She goes to Captain Shaw, and she's like, "Hey, this is the situation. We have a changeling on board. You know, this is what's going on. This is what's happening." And he gives her the idea of, we need to find like goo, like their goo bucket or something. Goo residue. That's what it was. It was residue.
That's what he was calling it. This is Shaw being like clever, like trying to be clever.
So in other words, they wanted to go find the thing that they go into their liquid form. And they just melt out for, so they can regenerate. And it was funny. Like there was a line that Shaw did. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was him giving Seven advice of like, hey, how do you go about and telling who's a changeling? And he's like, blah blah blah, you gotta look for abnormal behaviors and all this stuff. And he's like, all said and done, through and through, you're doing a good job, and I truly appreciate you. And then he's like, that is what I would say if I was a changeling.
Right.
And
yeah.
she's
So,
like,
so the quote is, Memory Alpha come through the rescue here. Look, you and I got off on the wrong foot. I underestimated you. You have great instincts. You're a natural leader. Make a great captain one day, which is something I would totally say if you were a changeling and not just a dick. And
that's what seven. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Seven said.
And you know what? Honestly, man, like that was spot on, perfect for the character. Like that, I think I said it in the last one, is that I love to hate this guy.
Oh, he's great.
And this episode though does change my opinion a little bit. We'll get to that in a little bit more. But we're going back into 10 forward. Jack and Picard are trying to talk through their thing, trying to get to know each other. And more crew start showing up there because like, hey, you know what? We kind of give up, or my break's over, or whatever.
Right. They're taking the emergency hologram to the next level. They're like, yep, we don't want to be on duty anymore. We're gonna die, so let's enjoy it while we can. And
we watch 7. She actually finds the bucket, right? And I want to comment on that part. So she goes to the crewman who died. Like she is in the quarters, and she finds the bucket in a little wall light console where it's clearly something is there. There's like zero effort in trying to hide this thing.
Yeah. There were a lot of things in this episode that moved along at the speed of plot.
Yeah,
that's one of them.
And to me, it's and I think they also determined that the guy who died, that the changeling was on the ship before any of this started.
Yeah.
So
they come to the realization that like this is bigger than Jack Crusher.
And also Jack Crusher, they're starting to see these strange things, like something's going on with him. We don't really know what. Something's happening to him. But anyways, 7 finds the residue and she calls down to the biochemistry lab, being like, "Hey, we're gonna need to scan this." And just so happens, two crewmen are walking on by, and this one crewman shoots the other crewman in the back, and then immediately turns around and tries to kill Seven.
Yeah.
But of course, it was a changeling. She blows off one of his arms, and he escapes into some sort of wall vent.
Yep.
As the flesh goo like creature he is.
That grossed me out.
It makes more sense. I definitely understand the direction more so than the metallic. I think the metallic would have been just too cheesy. So I kind of wonder though, like, did they try multiple different versions of that before they settled on this?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm sure we'll find out eventually, if that information isn't already out there from some interviews or something. It just like, I just wonder what choices they would have made back in 1995,
Yeah.
Because like the technology just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like, at least in the beginning, they're like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had a character that used the morphing technology from Terminator 2? And then they wrote Odo in to be that thing.
Yeah.
Without having any sort of a plan for the Dominion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Little did we know that, 3 years later, they would become like one of the most feared and favorite villains of the franchise.
Yeah.
But it absolutely felt, yeah.
I think they're only second to the Borg.
See, like, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much. The Borg were number one until Voyager for me. I really believe that Voyager just cut the balls out from the Borg.
Fair. So is the number one the Changelings for you?
The Dominion as a whole, not the Changelings specifically.
Okay.
But that whole triad of the Changelings, the Vorta
and the
Jem'Hadar, and then how they were able to bring in the Breen and the Cardassians, like that whole alliance. Man.
Oh yeah, that was rough.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's, to me, it's the Borg still is number one, then Dominion, and then Q. But anyways, we're going back to the Titan, and we're go back to the 10 forward holodeck. Picard and Jack are doing their bonding session with other people there, and Jack asks Picard about, has he been in tougher spots? And so Picard starts to tell him a story of when his namesake, Jack Crusher, how Picard and him, commandeered a shuttlecraft and things went awry, and they kind of had to find their way back to the ship of like a very harrowing adventure. Now this is where things get a little dicey with Shaw. Shaw has clearly disdain for Picard.
Right.
He is no fan of Picard. He's always been this way since the introduction of this series, and now we know why. Because Shaw was at the Battle of Wolf 359. For the listeners who may not be aware, Battle of Wolf 359 is a very famous Star Trek battle between the Borg and Starfleet. I think it was something around he said around 11,000 people died.
Yeah, that's the first time I had a number put to it.
So I wasn't really familiar with that, but I did know that a lot of Starfleet ships were destroyed during that battle. And that was one of their first experiences, or first major experiences with the Borg. And that was also the time when Picard was assimilated into the collective as Locutus. And Shaw was on one of the ships. He wasn't a captain, he was an engineer, and he was saying how they ordered to abandon ship, and they 50 of them made it down to the life pods, and only one life pod was functional, which could only hold 10 people. And so the 50 people that were down there, they didn't fight, they didn't do anything, they just kind of waited for orders. And somebody of authority came down and apparently just started pointing at people, be like, you, go. And Shaw was one of them. And so he, just left, just completely dumbfounded by the sheer luck of it that he escaped with his life.
Mm-hmm. And he's harboring that guilt.
Clearly, it's clearly guilt and anger towards Picard. And what's funny, Drew? Like we always talk about Picard being like the hero, and he's the guy, the man to take care of things. And honestly, after you put it to like that type of light, I kind of have like a level of respect for that character now.
For Shaw?
For Shaw, yeah. And I have a better understanding. I don't necessarily agree with his frustration in a sense, because we all know of the Borg, but I have a better understanding and respect to him.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. He doesn't just come off as just like a guy who's being a dick just to be a dick. It's similar to the way that Sisko felt about Picard when they first met, because Sisko's wife was killed during the Battle of Wolf 359. That is Wolf 359 is their 9/11. I feel minus I mean, there were 40 ships that got destroyed, and all of these ships were on other missions, so they had families on board. They were not expecting to go to war. So imagine like you're in the middle of like scanning some plants, checking for like bees pollinating plants on a planet. And all of a sudden you get a phone call from your captain, and he's like, beam up, we got to go fight the Borg. And then the battle lasts like 20 minutes.
And so it's kind of understanding to where Shaw has this like anger towards Picard. And what also it gave me an understanding as to why he didn't give control to Picard.
And it also explains why he doesn't refer to Seven as Seven.
Yeah.
But I mean, like Shaw is like clearly harboring some guilt about being one of those 10 that's picked as well too. Like this isn't just hatred to Picard. Like this guy's got some internal issues. That he's hiding behind sarcasm.
And I think at this point we can't necessarily blame him for that.
I don't.
And so around this point, Beverly is meeting, I believe, with Picard and Riker, and they have this, or I believe, no, it was Picard and Jack. I think Beverly was mentioning to that the waves that they're feeling that are coming in is kind of like labor. It was some sort of, I don't know. She's a doctor. She could count them, I guess.
Well, she was counting the time between the waves and counting them down and noticing that they were getting to be closer and closer together, kind of like contractions, I guess.
Yeah. And that was a little bit out there. Have some sort of giant space species in a nebula, but they do it before, and I'll give them a pass. But they devise a plan. They go to Riker and they devise a plan on how to use that to their advantage. Riker then becomes a little bit more friendly and on board with it. And then they like, oh man, things are not lost. And let's go ahead and try to start gearing up for that final push.
Right.
That was a joke, a labor joke.
Oh, I'm tired, man.
I could tell.
I'm sorry.
So they are doing their preparations for it. The thing is, though, the Titan has very old, I guess, engines, and they end up needing Shaw to help out with that final repair. And so he kind of comes in through as the engineer that could.
So there was this offhanded comment in like episode 1 where they're talking about this ship being a refit and how it's been refitted multiple times. And I guess the only thing that's still original to the ship are the nacelles.
Yeah. And they needed the nacelles to do this.
And apparently, like, none of the new engineers would know how to do what needed to be done because they've never had to do it, and it's outside of their scope. It's like you got to get the old guard to come in with the wrench and the grease and get it done.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny in that sense, but
It gave Shaw purpose.
It did, and the rest of the crew starts fitting things and getting things ready for this change. If I remember correctly, there was really not much else in this act right here. We just move on to Act 4 of the episode.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
And this is where everybody gets prepared to actually go through the plan. I think, actually one thing I did miss is that back on the Shrike, what was the villain's name?
Vatic.
It turns out Vatic is a changeling.
Yeah, so I wasn't really sure how to read this when I saw it, because I wasn't sure if Vatic was a changeling or if she just had like changeling tech.
Well, it seems like she cut her hand off.
Yeah.
And she purposely did it so that she can put into some sort of like saucepan that resonates and does like a communication system.
I wasn't sure if she cut her hand off or if she cut off something that was attached to her hand, like a glove.
That's fair.
But I think I'm pretty sure she actually cut her hand off.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she cut her hand off, and I'm pretty sure she's a changeling. If not, future episodes will correct me.
I guess so. Yeah.
But that was now that we know we're dealing with changelings, that didn't really turn out to be a surprise to me. It just was like, okay, cool, more plot. And then it turns out though, whoever she's communicating with really wants Jack. Like it's so much to a point where everything is expendable. And Vatic says, if we go after them, we're going to have to ditch the portal technology because it's going to be unstable in that type of environment. And so they end up just detaching the portal technology from their ship so they can't use it, and they go after the Titan. And so when the crew of the Titan are trying to go through with the whole plot or with everything, they are making it a way so that only Seven and Shaw are in the nacelles room. So, and then nobody else is to come down. Like they are clearly make that clear to Riker.
Right.
And while they're working on it, who does show up? LaForge.
Yeah.
She shows up and says, I was sent down by the captain. I'm here to help. My father, he was, a famous, I don't know, engineer. So he, I picked up a thing or two. And Shaw's kind of like looking at her, and she's kind of asking, like, I can't remember what exactly it was. She was asking like some weird question that was kind of like, I don't know. And Seven shows up with a gun against her head and is like, what are you doing here? And she's like, I'm here to help. And I think it was like, you're here to help what? Like, kind of like, use a sir or ma'am. And she goes, I'm here to help Hanukkah, I think it was.
Well, so she says, she calls her commander, and she's like, Commander what? She says, Commander Hansen.
Yes.
And then she shoots her like immediately. And she's like, LaForge doesn't call me Commander Hansen. She calls me Commander Seven out of respect. And she puts a little bit on extra on that respect.
Yeah. And of course,
just for Shaw.
Of course, LaForge was a changeling. That was the changeling they were, and they I guess changed how they die, and so the changeling just went back into LaForge's body, like frozen in that way, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
that's what it seemed like.
It did. I don't know. It did, didn't it?
But anyways, they Seven and Shaw get things fit up in time for that final push. They use it to kind of escape the nebula. I think they also see some squids around that are being birthed from the nebula, I guess. And they're making way to leave, and the Shrike is kind of in their way. But what do? They like to say, hey, what goes around comes around, and they tractor beam a giant freaking rock and smashes it in the face.
Riker's like, yo, do you want an asteroid? Because here's an asteroid.
Pretty much.
That was fun.
Oh, it was.
That was fun.
And then I think, I don't know, I'm probably saying this out of order, but they end up escape. But the one thing that I want to leave us on is going back to that 10 forward, like 5 years prior. Mm-hmm. And we see the cadets, Picard's kind of like shoo him away, be like, hey, I'm trying to eat my lunch here. Could you guys like leave me alone finally? Yeah. And one guy sitting at the bar turns out to be Jack. Is like, did you miss having a family or something like along those lines? And he's like, Starfleet's my family. That was his answer. Yeah. And I think at one point, like, it cuts into the Picard, and Picard realizes what that had happened in the past.
Yeah, it's like at that moment he remembered having that conversation.
Yep, and that's why Jack never really wanted to talk to him. Oh, I almost forgot though. One last thing before we get into talking on this is that the episode ends with Jack splashing water on his face, and then he starts hallucinating or something. He's starting to hear voices saying, find me together soon. It's some like version of an apocalypse in a door opening. So I'm not entirely sure what that's about. But I do have a theory. And the theory I have is that Jack and Beverly are changelings.
Really?
Yes. And that's the only reason why they want Jack. I mean, Beverly may not be a changeling. She may just be like trying to help Jack, but maybe she believes that he's her son because of some sort of mind control. But I think it's going to be one of those things where they don't actually know they're changelings until the very end, where they're like, oh, we're changelings. We're doing this because we're trying to prevent a war or something like that.
So you think they're like sleeper agents?
Not sleeper agents, but they're people that there were changelings and they don't like the direction where the Dominion was trying, this splinter cell of the Dominion trying to go. I think it's more of them trying to like protect the universe, and they're against with whatever this sleeper cell is. That's kind of a theory I have. We'll obviously see in about a few more episodes if any of that holds water.
I gotta be honest with you, man. I'm not feeling that theory. I'm okay with theorizing, but that was a little weird.
Hey, man, I'm that like that picture that thing from Always Sunny in Philadelphia where he's like pointing at the wall and like all the strings are connected. That's me right here.
Carol.
Pretty much.
Oh God, that's funny. What'd you think of these two episodes?
So I like the second one a lot better. Episode 4 felt like it actually had a purpose. Episode 3, it just felt like nothing really happened.
Well, 3 I feel like was a setup for 4.
Yeah,
I don't think you can have one without the other.
Oh no, you definitely couldn't. But I think the whole point of 3 was just to have 4.
Right.
And to me, like it's kind of stupid to say that. Of course, 3 is 2-4, but like to me, I'd rather have a self-contained episode to a point where there's a reason for this episode, not to build up the next episode.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we're gonna get those self-contained episodes in this show. Quite frankly.
Well, at this point, though, it does feel like we've reached a point where we're out of like chapter 1. We're out of part 1 of the season, because part 1 felt like them finding Beverly and Jack and then trying to save them. Part 2, unless they continue on the Titan, which I don't think they're going to. I think we're going to probably either see some sort of separation from the Titan, At this point, maybe them going separate ways or maybe going to another ship. But I think that's where things are going to change into the next section going forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we still have other characters to re-meet. You know, we haven't encountered Geordi yet. We've only spoken to Deanna through video calls.
And then Worf is not even like a part of hasn't even met the crew yet. So
right. And I mean, is there anybody else that I'm missing?
I mean, you have all the Tasha Yar, her Romulan grandchild.
Oh, Sela, yeah. I mean, I suppose Sela could show up. And then there was
the other.
I remember early promos showing Moriarty showing up in some capacity.
Wait, really?
You know, yeah.
No way, that would be freaking cool, man.
They announced him as he was one of the first announcements they made once they announced that they were doing the next gen.
Is it the actual actor or is it gonna be different?
I believe so. No, I believe it's the same actor.
That is trippy, man.
And I was expecting him to show up on the Titan, like in that scene in 10 Forward. I was expecting Picard to be like, "Oh, I have a friend who can help me."
Yeah, Moriarty.
But but then like now I'm thinking about it too. Like let's talk theories here. Is Moriarty what the Dominion stole from Daystrom? Because they were going to bring Moriarty to the Daystrom Institute so that he can be studied.
That's true. I also remember hearing that Lore is on this season too.
Well, Brent Spiner is. We don't know who he's playing.
I heard a rumor it's Lore. That's okay. What I heard. It's a rumor. I don't know if it's true, but I mean, Brent is like he plays 20 different characters. It feels.
Yeah, but they're all Soongs. Like
maybe this is another one. You know, it's funny. Like I hope for other cameos that are not expected. Like I do kind of hope Odo shows up. That would be really cool.
Yeah, it would be.
But I'm pretty sure he's not going to. But it would be nice to see other cast members. You know, it's funny though, Drew. Like we always like we kind of fanboy out with having all these, you know, old characters from the previous series, and it's kind of reached a point where I'm kind of like I'm torn where I love it but hate it at the exact same time because I would like to see more stories that are new and fresh. Yeah. While these still are new stories, it doesn't feel as fresh like Strange New Worlds.
I would agree. Yeah. I think Strange New Worlds hit that nice balance between having quote familiar characters and a bunch of new characters. You know, most of the characters that they brought in from previous episodes, with the exception of Spock, were largely undeveloped. You know, Nurse Chapel was only in a handful of episodes of Star Trek. You had Dr. Mbenga, who I think was in 1 or 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm. And Uhura, man, like,
yeah,
she even though she was in like the most of the TOS, like we're almost done with the first season, and she has almost no airtime when you think about it.
We were just talking about that yesterday.
And I love having her as a character on Strange New Worlds. But with Picard though, I think the direction we're going is good. I hope it's not just fanboy homage to the entire rest of the season. I hope there's actual points and logical plot points to continue. But if it progresses in the direction it's going, I'm confident I will enjoy the rest of the season. However, the episode 3 I think is an example of you got to be careful because it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, I think episode 3 is probably the weakest one thus far. And like again, that's okay. You know, they use it as a setup for episode 4. Like that's fine. I do think there was a lot of good in there. I think they just kind of jumped the shark a little bit towards the end.
I agree.
Well, you know, like I'm still into the show. Like I'm still on board for it. I haven't found myself, you know, being too infuriated. So they're doing something right, you know?
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next in the upcoming episodes.
Yeah, me as well. Me as well.
Anything else you want to cover, sir?
No, I'm tired. I'm ready to go to bed. It's
I can tell.
8:10. It is almost my bedtime.
Want to close this out?
I wish I was joking.
Want to close this out, buddy?
Yeah, I'll do that. Folks, we really appreciate you listening. We'll be back again in 2 weeks with some more Star Trek Picard Season 3 coverage. And stick around, because after that, we're going to be jumping back into the original series with our good friend Majid. Brad, as always, it is wonderful to chat with you.
You as well, sir. And
you hold on. Can we talk about the hesitation in your voice there?
You know, I was just trying to make sure the words I say is appropriate to your attitude.
I don't like your attitude, Brad.
Get some sleep, my friend. You deserve it.
I will. Good night, everybody.
Take care. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to yet another Star Trek podcast. We are a part of the Retro Sessions Network. This episode was recorded on March 10th, 2023. It's hosted by myself, Drew, and I was joined by Brad. Special thanks to Majid, who wasn't able to be here today, but he is responsible for taking care of all of our social media. Thanks, buddy. We miss you. Brad writes the synopsises for the episodes, and I take care of all the editing. Of course, we also have some help from two very good friends of ours. First, George Rattau for taking the time to make us look like Lower Decks characters, and William Grobalara for composing our wonderful music, Warp Speed and To the Stars. Both of them are available on the web. Check them out. We have links in the show notes. You know what other kind of links we have in the show notes? Social media links and Discord links. Social media like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and Discord like Discord. So you can go chat with us about Star Trek or video games, or maybe show us pictures of your cats and dogs and hamsters or whatever. I don't know. People have hamsters still, right? That's pretty cool. Of course, all of this information is available on our website at www.yetanothersTpod.com. We'd love for you to check out the site and listen to all of our past episodes, including our coverage of Strange New Worlds and our ongoing coverage of Star Trek, the original series. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.